Hello, hi, we are live. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the panel, The Preteen Shift Supporting Your Growing Child. My name is Shilpa Kulkarni, and I am the president and co founder of Shiv's Third Eye, a New Jersey based nonprofit established in memory of our son, Shiv, whom we lost at the age of 14 to mental illness to suicide. Shiv's Third Eye was created from both love and loss with the purpose of helping families talk about mental health earlier, more openly, and without stigma. We focus on education, awareness, and prevention because we truly believe that what we understand early, we can support better. Tonight's panel is especially close to that mission. The preteen years, roughly the ages of 8 to 12, are often very much underestimated. They can look quiet on the surface, but underneath, there is a huge storm going on. We as parents see the sweetest, cuddliest little angels suddenly turning into moody strangers overnight, or sometimes slowly pulling away, leaving us wondering what really happened. This conversation is designed to help with exactly that. Tonight is about learning together, reducing fear, and giving parents tools, not judgment. I am honored to be joined by two outstanding local clinicians who bring deep expertise and real world experience working with children and families. Dr. Friedman is a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, and Dr. Erica Lander Miller, she is a founder and clinical director of the Behavioral Care Center of New Jersey. I welcome Dr. Friedman and Dr. Miller to introduce themselves further. Thank you, Dr. Miller and Dr. Friedman.
Thank you, Shilpa. Thanks for having us tonight. It's an honor to be here, a privilege, and I don't love public speaking, so this is a good venue to be doing this online. I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist. I also see adults. I've been in practice in New Jersey for about 20 years. My interest in psychiatry started really as an interest in humans. I didn't know if I'd end up working in anthropology, psychology, maybe medical school, and finally I decided I wanted to be able to combine everything. And so in psychiatry, we're looking at all of those things. We're looking at the biology underneath. We're looking at the culture in which a kid is growing up. I say kid, that means child or adolescent. And so it's a very synthesized view of human development, fundamentally. Other people call it developmental psychiatry. I think that's probably a better name for working with kids. That being said, humans develop until the last day of our final breath. So we're always developing. But when we think in terms of development and the trajectory for humans, we're talking brain development from 0 up to about 24, 25 years old. Tonight, we're focusing on the preteen shift. So we'll dive in a little more narrowly there, but it seems narrow and it's not because there's a whole lot happening. Shilpa referenced some of this is under the surface, and then suddenly a stranger is inhabiting your house. So we're looking at the age range of usually prepubertal to kids entering puberty, but not too deep into adolescence just yet. It is a time of, I think Shilpa used the word storm. There's a hormonal storm that's happening for a lot. There's a social storm that's happening for a lot. There's a self-reflective growth storm of self-awareness and development happening as well. We're looking typically at the ages of 9 to 12 years old, so not quite teen at 13. The marketing community has labeled this target group tweens. They are between childhood and adolescence. So we've heard of this. And I always think of this crew as sort of awkward, stuck in the middle, one foot in childhood. They still want their daddy or mommy to soothe them. And the other foot is towards adolescence, where they need the mommy and daddy to step the hell back and give them some space. So there's an awkwardness. There's a stuck in the middle piece. Some of the developmental milestones, we'll look at this from sort of the inside, the outside in. Outside, what do we see? We see, if we've all been to the pediatrician and we've had the graph where we see height and weight charted and we make sure our kid's growing on the graph, there's another graph that other folks in child development are looking at, somebody like Dr. Miller and myself, which is this kid growing intellectually? Is this kid growing socially? Is this kid able to keep up with academics? What are the other milestones and what's the trajectory that any given kid is on? Everyone's on their own trajectory, but we want to make sure they're still on it. They're not falling off. So these are some of the things we measure. Some people will measure this with neuropsychological testing, very specific and precise, looking at different functioning regions of the brain. As a child psychiatrist, I don't dive in quite that deeply. I'm looking more at the emotional and the functional piece out in the world. So we're looking at during these years, and think of, for all of us who are looking at kids 6th and 7th grade, a little bit into 8th grade, they're probably 12 years old by 8th grade. We're seeing a steady growth in height and weight. Some kids, girls earlier than boys, are having growth spurts. As hormones hit, you see this. And so this may be the cohort of 7th graders where you notice all the girls are taller than the boys all of a sudden. The boys will catch up in 8th grade and 9th grade, but the girls leap ahead here. There's a growth spurt. You also see on the physical developmental level better coordination. Kids are more able to participate in sports with greater success. Their balance is better. Their strength is better. They are starting to master complex motor skills. They're very good at riding bikes now. They are more able to participate in team sports, take instructions from coaches as opposed to just everyone chasing whatever ball it may happen to be. Handwriting starts to become more fluid, although I'm not so convinced that children nowadays write that much because I think everyone's on a device of some type. Puberty, fun times. Hormones start to surge. Girls earlier than boys. But what do we see? And I hate to say smell. We see some breast development. Girls may start menstruating. They may simply have other changes that don't quite yield menstruation. The voice is changing. Both girls will drop their voice and boys will start to drop their voice. This is, of course, challenge because different cultures, for example, in Judaism, you have to go potentially do a bar or bat mitzvah. And of course, the challenge is your voice is cracking, it's dropping, and you're supposed to get up in front of everyone you know and sing in Hebrew, and it's a real challenge. I think it's part of the rite of passage is testing what do you do when your body's going through this change, and will you be accepted and indoctrinated into the next level as a rite of passage towards adolescence and adulthood. Muscles are starting to grow in boys. They're starting to take a look in the mirror and flex a little bit. Mom, Dad, look at what I've got, right? We may see body odor. Sorry, we may smell body odor. We may notice acne. And there's some body hair happening. It could be facial hair. It sometimes is going to be more on the arms and the legs, etc. It's not going to be typically the full adult coating that we see. Baby teeth are finally falling out. Kids are finally losing their final teeth and the adult teeth are filling in. Kids may become more skilled at playing musical instruments or participating in crafts. So that's more sort of the physical outside developmental stuff. Cognitive milestones, the brain, what's going on the inside? How is the, what's the word? Sophistication emerging. Thinking becomes more logical. There's a better chance that abstract thinking, the world of ideas and concepts, is emerging and kids can manipulate more ideas as opposed to sort of the concrete world outside. Piaget, Jean Piaget was, I believe, Swiss, and he defined very much the developmental phases that we see cognitively happening as kids get older up until full adulthood. So concrete operations means simple things like mathematics, simple math, and that if you see it, you believe it. Abstract or formal operations is more that ability to manipulate in the mind concepts like legitimacy, honesty, dishonesty, morality. That falls under the world of abstract and formal operations. It's a stat, and I will share it because it's always been a concern. About 50% of the United States adulthood has not exited from concrete operations into formal operations. So, of everyone we bump into out there in the world, some people are just kind of concrete. They can't get big ideas. They don't understand. And they need to see something to believe it. It has to be tangible. Kids this age are starting to understand cause and effect. They can classify objects very well. They can start to solve multi-step problems. If any of us have been approached by our middle school children to help with mathematics, you probably know what I'm talking about. Their memory's getting better. Attention span is getting better. Ability to organize and plan things, like do their homework without somebody looking over them and prompting them. I also think of this stage, and this is middle school, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, of backpacks and lockers. Kids need to be able to organize. What item do I need in what class and what part of my day and how am I going to plan these things out. That's not about IQ. That's not how smart you are at solving a problem, but it is planning and considering time and organization. So kids are starting to master this in middle school. They're better at perspective taking, seeing the viewpoints of others. We call this empathy. There's something theory of mind, which implies that people understand other people may see things in a different way than oneself. Reading comprehension is improving. Kids should be able to read chapter books, novels, that kind of thing. Maybe writing is improving as well, developing ideas and presenting them verbally with greater depth and detail. And an ability to think about hypotheticals, moral reasoning, the idea of right versus wrong becomes nuanced. An example I like to give is there's a highway, there's a speed limit, 75. You can ask a kid, what happens if you speed? The concrete answer is the police give you a ticket. The abstract answer is, well, it's a shared setting, it's a public space, and by going faster than the speed limit, I put myself and others at risk. That would be a more abstract idea. Same scenario, but the concrete thinker is just looking at what's the difference between getting caught and not, and someone else is looking at it through the moral reasoning of what's right versus wrong. This is growing a lot with middle schoolers. There's greater independence. There's more separation. Kids start to drift further away from home and focus more on their friends outside of the family. They start to test some boundaries. They're going to push back. They've made nice little rule followers, perhaps, like little Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. But it's normal to both be oppositional and or be compliant. Both of those are starting to be considered normal. So there isn't one thing that says my kid's a troublemaker because he or she's not following a rule, or my kid's a great kid because he or she is following a rule. All of it is expected to be explored in this age. It's an age of discovery. Kids also start to be interested in some privacy. You might notice they don't want to play in a public setting in the house. They want to go spend some alone time in their room. Doesn't mean they're necessarily on a device. We'll get to devices later. But it means that they realize they like being in their own head, exploring. I want to reference some of the academic milestones because, as we know, kids are in school. It's their primary vocation at this age. We are hoping that kids are learning to read and stay on grade level with books like fiction and nonfiction. They are able to pull out meaning. They can identify themes, summarize ideas, make inferences. In writing, I referenced this earlier, they can produce clear, organized essays. Hate to say it, we're doing 3 to 5 paragraph essays by now. They can use grammar, they understand punctuation. In math, they can do ratios, proportions, equations. Again, I have trouble with this. I don't like it when my 8th grade kid asks me to help. Maybe the beginning of geometry, the concept of surface area. So these are evolving and they're built sequentially, foundationally year to year. In science, they can understand the scientific method, which is pretty crucial. They understand some basic biology, space, life science. In social studies, they're looking at world and regional history. They're starting to learn a little bit about the way government works in different aspects, different countries, regions, perhaps. Study skills. They can use a planner. They're managing their homework. They can switch classes. I referenced this earlier with the backpacks and the lockers, and they know how to get where they need to be on time. Now, further into middle school, complex tasks like comparing and contrasting perspectives, writing structured essays with thesis. They are starting to develop research skills. They can start to take notes. In math, this again is slightly beyond my pay grade. They work with rational numbers. I vaguely remember that from a long time ago. Multi-step equations, inequalities, statistics and probability. They're starting to get a bigger picture of what this is all about. Science, they're actually doing experiments now. They're not just learning it, they're doing it. And then they can attempt to present that and write that up and make that make sense in a verbal way for their teachers. Forces, energy, that's physics, chemical reactions. Social studies, they're looking at world cultures, US history, and it's more about organization and time management, learning to take notes, because what's coming soon? High school. It's going to be another level up. I do want to reference that different cultures, and I referenced a little bit different rites of passage, and it depends where people are living and with whom they're living as to how rites of passage are achieved. I referenced the bar or bat mitzvah in Judaism. Every culture has rites of passage and at different stages. I'm thinking of the Maasai warriors.
Yeah,
Maasai. Masai.
Absolutely.
Oh, and I guess the time is almost up for me here.
Yeah, yeah, we should
Go ahead.
probably. No, no, I think you're right. Like different cultures have different similar times, the rites of passages, because puberty is considered as very big milestone for everybody, and somehow or the other they want to celebrate it. So absolutely, that's happening. So in terms of this is like you just explained so beautifully, Dr. Friedman, the whole normal growth period, and you have kind of said those 3 years, right? But when is it's not normal, or it needs attention? We should not even say not normal, because sometimes it's just a different time zone, right? So when is it that it needs attention? And I think we would come to Dr. Miller also, because I want to introduce her too. And maybe Dr. Miller, you can tell when kids come to you, when do you think that something seems like it needs attention?
Sure. So, Shilpa, thank you for having us on. Truly, you're a gift to the community. This is such a wonderful thing you're doing to give back. And I am always happy to be a part of anything Dr. Friedman is doing because he is brilliant and I'm happy to hear him speak always. So, I am excited to be here. I am a psychologist, primarily work with children through young adults. Also, work in New Jersey, run a practice, Behavioral Care Center of New Jersey. Happy to answer some questions about that later. I think your question is really helpful and really important to note. We so often talk about what's wrong, what's not going well. I really appreciate, Dr. Friedman, how you're talking about what to expect, right? Because this is an age that is really scary for a lot of people. There's so much change happening, and it's not happening in a smooth, easy way. This is stepwise change. This is a time of uneven development, and it can be incredibly confusing for our kids and for ourselves. Across kids, there's a large spectrum of emotional maturity and physical maturity. You can be 12 and appear 8. You can be 12 and appear 16. There's just a wide range. And even within that, within any one particular child, there are inconsistent changes happening. You're speaking with your sweet little baby one moment and your incredibly irritable teen the very next moment. And it's the same child, the same day, sometimes 10 minutes apart. And so it's really tricky to understand when to be concerned, right? And so I think generally in the world of psychiatry and in the world of psychology, our rule of thumb is when there is something happening that's interfering with functioning. If something is happening that is creating problems for your child in terms of their friendships and their peer relationships or their academics at school, or even their relationships at home in a significant way. We expect some of this to happen when they're tweens, but if it is starting to create a problem where they're not functioning, they're not able to get to school the way you expect them to, there's a sudden dip in grades that feels very inconsistent with how they were functioning before. They're struggling to either make friends or maintain friendships when that never used to be a problem. Those are signs that it's time to come in and check on things. And I know we'll get to it in a little bit, but we're going to also talk about, we talked somewhat already about the physical changes that are happening and the academic changes. We're also going to talk about the social emotional changes, which can feel a lot like a roller coaster and is totally normative.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you. So, Dr. Friedman, one of the things that I feel this is one question that has always been difficult, especially for younger kids, parents, it is even more so difficult. So, let's say my child, we feel like something, one of the early signs we are picking on that, we could probably take them to the psychologist or therapist, or sometimes we could just take them to a psychiatrist, to you. It's hard as a parent when I'm not used to psychology. Like I come from an immigrant background, right? So even to understand that I'm taking him or her to a doctor, and then suddenly the doctor is sitting and talking to them, but there are no blood tests, there are no brain scans, there is nothing. So what exactly do you actually look at when you are, and I this is one question that I've always been curious.
The fun answer is we look at everything. Everything can go in. Everything is relevant. What we're doing is we're sifting through the big picture and we're trying to narrow it down always. So referencing what Dr. Miller just said, is there's the social, there's the emotional, there's the academic, there's the cognitive, there's I think also the role in the family, and that goes under social, but I think, family is sort of the fabric that keeps us all together somehow. So what's happening? Where's this kid fitting in the family? And then getting back to the question of where's this kid not meeting the milestones? So we just talked about sort of what we expect as normal development. Where's this kid falling off that curve? I referenced the pediatric growth curves. And some kids are going to be on whichever curve they're on. The key is to not see a decline, right? So it doesn't mean that we're all trying to somehow engineer children into becoming straight A students and get the best scores on everything. It's just, if you were doing okay, what happened that you're not now? The other piece that I'll throw in is there's the question of, we call it subjective distress, meaning the discomfort that a kid may feel, right? We've all seen our kids be unhappy, feel pain, they get hurt, they get sad, they get frustrated, right? All of which is part of the normal range of human emotion. But if it's a quantity, it's an emerging, increasing challenge and a burden for that kid, we take a look. So I don't know if I gave the right answer to that
No,
question,
no,
or
absolutely.
but
That's
we're
good.
looking at everything. And so in an evaluation with a kid, interview parents, obviously, spend time with that kid one-on-one. With the parents around, sorry, there's a bias. The kid may inhibit themselves and not tell the full story. Try to get information from teachers, because again, kids are spending 6 or 7 hours a day at school. Teachers mostly know what's happening with those kids, and their input is a really crucial report to include it. And then you're synthesizing. And from the psychiatric standpoint, and I think also in psychology, medically, how's this kid? Is this kid healthy? Is this kid getting nutrition? Is this kid getting sleep? If we don't get nutrition and sleep, nothing's going to go well. And I hate to be so sort of overly simplified about it, but we've all been sleep deprived. We don't function well. Sleep deprivation is used as torture in many countries around the world. So if we see a kid who is spending too much time doing this at night, well, guess what? There's a big answer that needs to be solved before we do anything else. So I hope that answers that question.
Yes. I wish I can bring my 17-year-old to you and you tell her that, because I can't seem to get across. Everything else
Good
takes a
luck.
back seat. Sleep
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
most important thing.
It's
Uh,
foundational, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think we talked a lot about the changes that are happening in this preteen shift, right? One of the things that both of you said, and which is what I understood, that you are saying that anything the kid, they are still going through all these different mood changes, this, that, whatever, but at the same time you both said that if they have been having lots of friends and then suddenly they stop having friends, or they have been very nice and they stop being nice to the parents or whatever, but that's also part of being uh, puberty changes as well. So how do parents differentiate that this is developmentally normal behavior versus signs that needs closer attention, and is it even possible for parents to figure out, should they just come to the professionals and whether we should just say, let them let them actually talk to Dr. Miller or Dr. Friedman, and then they will figure out, is that something, the answer for that? Because I have heard this from a lot of parents, that how do I know when it is okay and when I should be really think about it as serious enough to take them to the doctor?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak a little bit to some of the social emotional changes that we're looking for around this age. And I think the rule of thumb is you do the best that you can to read up on what is typical development. And you also want to trust your gut. If you're ever unsure, you can always bring them to a professional for help. There are times people bring their kids in and I meet with their kiddo, I meet with the parents, and my advice is they're a teenager and it's frustrating and overwhelming. and they're okay, right? And if you see this change or this change, come back. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I've never had a parent regret bringing their child in and being told that things are okay. I have had parents regret not bringing their kiddos in, right? So if you have any concern or you're just unsure, you don't always have to commit to therapy. You can commit to just checking in or an assessment with a professional to see. So, I'll talk a little bit about what to expect, but also if you're ever unsure, trust your gut and have someone else put eyes on. This is a really confusing and hard to figure out moment because these changes come with a lot of irritability. And so it's hard to know what is typical irritability and what is not. And
Yeah.
so we'll talk a little bit. Some of the social changes that we're expecting in our tweens is this big focus on independence. They really want to be independent from parents, except for the moments where they really want your help and they need you there, right? And there's a lot of rule testing and boundary testing. There's certain times, there's the 2, 3-year-old rule breaking, then there's the tween version. It's developmentally appropriate. They're feeling out their independence and where they are. We expect it to some degree. If you're concerned in any way that it's too much testing out of the rules, then you check in about it. So there is this both intense need to be independent. There's also this really growing intense need for belonging and an over reliance on peer feedback. So I always tell parents, if you're worried, check in because they are probably telling their friends even more than what they're acknowledging to you. So we only get to see the very top of the iceberg. So if you're concerned based on the top of the iceberg, then check in because there's probably a lot more there that's happening. So there is this heightened focus and the importance of friendships. Friends are central. There is this heightened sensitivity to social rewards that has to do with the brain development, everything that's happening for them. They really want group acceptance, strong bonds. They will prioritize peers over family, which can be incredibly difficult and heartbreaking as parents. A real increase in group activities. You see cliques starting to really solidify, and that can lead to both social support. It can also lead to bullying and to some cruelty that's happening with who's in the group, who's outside the group. There's a lot of it sounds young, but this starts around 8, 9, 10 years old, and then it just intensifies for a few years before it starts to get better again. And they're practicing out, they're learning and developing new complex social skills, but they're just learning them. So empathy, perspective taking, compromising, conflict resolution, cooperation, negotiation, all these skills they're learning, and there's a big spectrum. Some kids it comes more naturally to, and they're developing them faster and earlier, and some kids it takes a little bit longer to get there, and that's okay. Some kids are still very concrete. I don't hit this person because I don't want to get in trouble. Other kids, I don't hit this person because I could hurt them. They will be upset with me. It'll impact my friendships. But that's okay to go from either place when you're 9. You might still have that really concrete sense. You might have a more nuanced sense of that. And so it can be really confusing. Even within one child, they can have more nuanced moments and more concrete moments. And so I think figuring out how to ride that can be really, really tricky. And that's true across all topics parents really often feel uncomfortable talking about, but is so important to start talking about at this age, is they're also starting to understand more complex topics related to sexuality and to puberty. Their bodies are changing, their interests are changing, they're exploring their identities, they're navigating all the societal expectations, and we want to create these opportunities for conversations around sex and sexual behaviors, and we want to figure out how to listen without judgment, without shaming, right? And so these are a lot of the social changes that are happening. At the same time, we also see these key emotional changes happening. They are going through all of this change while they're also navigating intense emotions. It's why tween books all have vampires and werewolves who live forever and they will love you for 500 years and fight for you. There is a natural intensity to this age that is developmentally appropriate, and it's why the tween literature matches what's going on in their own bodies and minds. There is that just need for intensity and a little bit black and white extreme thinking and feeling. And so some of that's the hormonal shifts and the brain development that causes mood swings, causes sensitivity, what we often think of as dramatic reactions that they may not have any control over. But there's simultaneously an increased awareness of others' opinions. So we also see this increase in insecurity, sensitivity to criticism. It's almost like at this age, they're inside out, right? Like the slightest bit of criticism feels like you've just said the most horrible thing you could ever say to them, even though you thought you were being incredibly gentle in how you might be approaching them. Um, we're seeing this identity formation, so they're starting to define themselves through interests and values, what groups they're a part of. Sometimes they're exploring who they are in contrast to their family's expectations of them. That can be really difficult to watch also as a parent, right? They're going into their closet and kind of trying on different identities on different days. Normative to be expected. It may not be consistent. They may be a different version of themselves on different days, and they're just trying to see what fits right and what feels comfortable, right? And again, the big piece that is kind of woven throughout all of this is they're doing all of this while they're learning how to manage strong emotions, intense anger and fear and sadness and rejection and disappointment that can come in big, intense waves, right? And so this is all kind of happening at the same time while they're developing these new skills, like perspective taking, like risk assessment. They're trying to figure out, what potential consequences might arise. Their frontal lobe, the part of their brain that's going to help them plan out what happens next, what could happen, isn't done developing in the best of times till late teens, early 20s. So they are just at the very beginning of learning these skills. And sometimes their bodies and their hormones and their emotions are growing faster than the part of their brain that's going to help them slow down and think things through and think about what could happen next. So I know one of your questions to both Dr. Freeman and I were how do we help? What do we do?
I was going to say, like, all of this is well and good. I know exactly how to, change and bathe and feed a 5-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old. What do I do with this complex person and who is still a 8-9-year-old?
I think, and I don't know if you would agree, Dr. Freeman, maybe I'm pessimistic, but I would say actually the most helpful piece of advice is to not worry about doing it right because you won't. Because what's right in this moment, they're going to tell you is wrong 5 seconds from now. And then 10 seconds later, it'll actually be the right thing again. And so it's okay to not be doing it right. If you do it with love and you do it with curiosity and you do it without judgment, then that's all you can do in the moment, right? You do the best you can. You want to try to foster independence. So this is an age where we want to give them more choices, more responsibilities, see what they're capable of, and let them fail. It's okay if they're adamant that they're capable of something you don't believe they can do quite yet, but there's no danger to it. Let them try. Not only is it okay for them to figure that out on their own, the skill of learning to try and fail and get back up is so incredibly important for our kiddos. So we want to give them those moments. We want to encourage friendships that are positive, group activities. We want to model and talk about healthy ways to handle emotions and conflict because they are dealing with intense storm of emotions. So we want to show them it's okay for us to have our emotions because it's a wonderful opportunity to show them how we manage. When we're frustrated, when we're sad, when we're anxious, we don't have to pretend to be okay all the time. Or it's really a lovely opportunity to show them how to skillfully manage intense emotions and to model skills that you use in those moments, right? I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I want to have this conversation in a calm way. I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to take a few breaths and I'm going to come back so I can be more calm while we're having this conversation, right? It's such a great thing to model because it's what we want our kids to do. It's how they're going to build resilience. It's so important to really come to them without judgment, to be able to listen, to validate, and to be realistic about how they're going to manage through this. The storm is a perfect word, Dr. Friedman. This is a storm.
I'll jump in, and you did 95% of what I would have said, and you said it far more elegantly. Thank you. Parents, we want to be the best parents we can. We know that. We will definitely fail routinely, and that's expected. You just referenced that. There's different parenting styles, and what literature has shown, what data has shown is there's, and I'm thinking more Western culture, I can't speak to other cultures, but there's authoritative parenting, and there's authoritarian parenting. And this is at all ages, guys. I'm talking from as soon as they have language, till whenever they finally leave home and go become and establish their independent lives. So the authoritative parent says, I'm going to tell you why we do it, and then you're going to be doing it. And I understand that you don't want to. This gets to the empathy piece that you just mentioned. And we're doing this because I am the boss. And you may not like it, and that's okay. You can do it under protest. The authoritarian parent says, we're doing it this way because I said so. And that's the end. There is no discussion. You have no voice. I'm not going to actually tell you why this is good for you, and I, as your parent, am aware of how to care for you. It's a very different message. The authoritative parent and the authoritarian parent may produce the same behavior. Let's say the behavior is, I want you to put all your clothing in the drawer. The authoritative parent says, I want you to do this because the rest of us in the family don't have time to do it, and because you're going to take this skill with you to college or wherever else you go, and I know that you can, this shows that you're an independent, capable kid, and you're going to do it. The authoritarian parent says, you're putting it in because I said so, and it's not an option. This is how we do it. Both kids will put the laundry in the drawer. The question is, what's the relationship with the parent? One, that kid fears the parent and says, oh my God, I did it because they scared the crap out of me, and now I've got an anxious piece, and I'm not well connected to that person because they're kind of mean to me. And the other one says, I didn't like it that they told me to, but I understand why, and I'm going to be a team player, and I'm going to do it, right? So same outcome, but very different relationship. Kids need consistency from the parent. The authoritative parent is going to say the same message over and over, and the kid's going to push back, and that's okay. But kids need guardrails. Kids need guidance. They are kids. They're not the boss yet. They don't know enough, right? So it's our job as the parents to keep providing these pretty consistent guide rails. Kid's going to bump against it. That's fine. If we as parents are confused, tired, busy, or lazy, and we're inconsistent, it's going to backfire for the kid, because now you have a kid who says, I don't know where the limits lie. Sometimes I win and sometimes I lose when I push the boundary. If we all think of gambling, the slot machine, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. It can be exciting, but it's also anxiety provoking. We don't want to provoke anxiety in kids. The world is a challenging enough place. The hormones are coming and challenging. So what we want to do is always say, here's the guide rails. You're going to be okay, but you got to stay in these guardrails. And that's it. We don't want to create that discomfort. Some kids don't mind that and they're happy, but I, of course, work in the world, as does Dr. Lander Miller, of some kids with anxiety. And so we don't want to create anxiety. We want predictability. We want, I hate to say this, the illusion of control in our lives. It's a good one. It's mostly illusory. We want calm parental consistency. Then what we're nurturing in that kid with us is a consistent, stable, secure attachment. That's specific language regarding attachment theory about how people interact. You don't want anxious attachment. You don't want some ambivalent, insecure, or reactive attachment, which is really not even connected at all. So I just want to jump in on that piece as well
That is
with the parenting.
fantastic.
And we're going to mess up, and that's okay. Just, it's about the percentages.
That is amazing. Actually, I just realized I forgot to mention to the attendees on Facebook and YouTube, please, if you have any questions, please put it out on the comments, and we will try to take those questions towards the end as time permits. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Miller, and thank you, Dr. Friedman. So one thing that I noted, and this is something that I have spoken to my friends as well. We speak a lot about what the parents need or how they need. Again, coming from different cultures, different, I know the kind of parenting that I grew up with, probably. And then, of course, when I'm growing up, I obviously, and I think that happens with everybody. Oh, my parents didn't do this. I resented that. So I'm not going to do that with my children. So it's like their parenting plus something of my own, which I think is right. And that's my version of parenting. And I think that would be like, I, as a parent, as you said, Dr. Friedman, we all want to be the best parents. At the end of it, that's our culture. That's a natural instinct that we want our kids to get everything, and we want to give them the best of everything. And, all of that, everybody, for the most part, I would say everybody loves their kids to the most, right? And that's what we want. But where do I, as a person, I am an engineer, I am a professional, I'm all of this, but I do not have any of those skills that you mentioned, which is being an authoritative parent, being a patient, curious parent, I never learned those skills. So
Mm.
how do I get those and when do I get
Erica, this is you.
it?
No problem. Would argue that you do have those skills and you just don't trust yourself. If you're an engineer, you are by nature a curious person who has hypotheses and tests them out. You don't go in assuming you have the answer to a problem. You're a scientist. You go in with a question and then you figure out how to test out what works. We do a lot of behavioral parenting work at the practice. And yes, research supports how we do it, but then there's the individual human who's in front of us. And so we really need to see what works. We have the general principles of behaviorism that help us figure out what's likely to be effective. And then we move into our hypothesis testing. What is more likely to be effective? And for anyone on here who has more than one child, you know that what works for one of your kids is not always the same thing that works for the other child. Some kids need a softer touch. Some kids need a heavier hand. Some kids need explicit directions. Some kids need you to ask open-ended questions that lead them down the road so they think that they've come up with the answer themselves, right? So I actually think that you do have the skills. I think it's parents learning to trust themselves and to go in with curiosity and to go in with non-judgment and to feel empowered. I think that parenting fads are like dieting fads. You don't remove an entire piece of the food pyramid because that's actually not healthy. What we need is a little bit of everything. If all you're doing is setting limits and consequencing your child, it's going to compromise your relationship. If you're permissive and don't set any limits because you don't want to upset your child's likely to struggle and not be able to function, right? All or nothing thinking is rarely ever the right answer. And that doesn't mean that you're always in the middle. I had a mentor once who talked a lot about riding a bike. Acceptance and change is riding a bike. And if you're riding a bike, you're never actually even. If you were even, the bike would fall over. The reason the bike continues to move is you're constantly shifting left, right, left, right, left, right. And that's what keeps you upright and moving. And parenting, that's how I think of parenting. It's not that you're perfectly in the middle all the time. Sometimes you lean towards more firmer limits, and sometimes there's a moment of flexibility, and sometimes there's a moment for curiosity, and sometimes there's a moment of I don't care why this is the rule because this is the rule because this is unhealthy, right? Like phone use, often I'm a little bit less curious, not zero curiosity, but I have some very clear limits in my mind. And so you want to think of that bike riding, and if you start to tip, then you tilt the other way. And you're going to tilt too far sometimes. And so then you tilt back. As long as you keep shifting, you will keep moving forward. The second you try to be perfect and in the middle is the second you fall. The second you shift all the way in one direction, you're going to fall again, right? And so I think it's so hard. People want solid answers. But the truth is, it depends. And listen to your gut and listen to your child. And you move with them and you keep moving forward by doing that.
Yeah, it's a very hard concept because as I said, I'm an engineer. I'm more into science and not into art. So this is more like parenting art. So it's a difficult. One other thing that we have, again, I've discussed it with some friends and other parents. Again, as I said, like coming from, Indian background, Asian background, one of the things I think not even Asian, it's more immigrant probably parenting or value system maybe that there is a lot of most of the immigrant households probably. Again, this is not every we are talking about some percentage. The academic and cultural expectations because we come from a different culture. So those expectations are quite a lot, especially academic strong academics are really really valued a lot more. Can those expectations put too much pressure on the kids while they are actually growing up and that preteens mental health, can that be a problem?
I'm going to answer that very quickly. I'm going to say yes. There are multiple tasks happening developmentally as we went over, and academics is a big part of it, right? Kids are in school 6 or 7 hours a day. It's sort of their vocation. It's what they're supposed to be doing, but they're supposed to also be growing socially. They're supposed to also be growing as far as physical development and everything we talk about, balance and agility and sports teams, etc. So it is an important, big, measurable part. And this is part of the problem with academic achievement. We measure it, we see numbers. We don't just get, hey, thumbs up, you did really well, kid, you're on a good path. No parent, we all want that as a parent, but we want to know the numbers, right? That's kind of, and I'm going to say the numbers are important because, at least from my angle, and maybe Dr. Landry Miller's, that tells us is the kid still on their path, right? If the numbers are declining, we have a metric, right? We can see this and we can address it and say there's a problem. But in parenting, I mean, we all know sometimes kids are really great at academics and it's a strong suit. Other kids are really great at athletics and it's a strong suit. And some kids, their social qualities, their social abilities, their charisma, it's their strength. It's much more than calculus ever will be, right? So they couldn't become engineers, but maybe they could become salespeople. Maybe they could be promoters and develop, I don't know, programs in public speaking, right? So everyone's going to find their strength and make the most of it. And it's a challenge for the parent because we're looking to make sure our kids are at preteen years making the most of everything they can, but we don't want to push too hard into one way because you're going to potentially ask the kid to do something that they're just not capable of, and they're doing all of these things simultaneously. That's my answer.
So it's a very interesting, yes, I understand that pushing them beyond their capability, absolutely a problem. But when it comes to probably maybe hard work, work ethic, and giving them that value of what is the priority and what is important, if we don't do that as parents, we feel that we wouldn't be doing our job well. So I think sometimes it is taken out of context. I get it that when, if you are seeing your child struggling to the point of functioning, absolutely, the academics and everything should be pushed behind. But there are times when there would be like, the thought about that maybe you should not be pushing them. Maybe you should not be talking about academics all the time, but academics are important. Or that is, and I think earlier, was it Dr. Friedman or Dr. Miller, one of you said, as a student, that is their vocation. That's what they are supposed to be doing in this particular age, so having that focus. And I think as a immigrant mother, I do think that we struggle with what is, how much is right, and how much, where do we put that, stop to that, is probably our question. And I think, I don't know whether there is a specific answer to that, but that's where we struggle probably the most.
I have a specific answer, but it's going to sound non-specific. And then Erica, I want you to jump in. It's to the best of that kid's ability. You can't push beyond your ability, right? And we know some kids are remarkably capable and they're doing pre-calculus in 7th grade. And there's some other kids who are in a much more rudimentary math ability at 7th grade. My question is, are you trying your hardest? And if you are, then you can't try harder than your hardest, right? But if you're not trying your hardest, I will routinely ask kids, on the percent of effort out of 100%, please hopefully tell me the truth, how much you putting out for school. And kids, I don't know why, they seem to tell me legitimate numbers. Doc, I'm doing 60%, or Doc, I'm up at 100, but a lot of kids will confess or admit, I'm at the 70% zone. And I say, well, do you see what the problem is? I'm not looking for A's, and I don't think your parents are looking for A's, but they're looking for 100%. They want to know you're really engaged because this is your job as a kid. So I look at it on an individual basis, on an effort basis, on an ability basis. So it's not on an external expectation. It's on a internal, specific, one kid at a time basis. Erica, jump in.
Yeah, I couldn't have put that better. I think one of the things Dr. Freeman is highlighting is there's a difference between focusing on effort and outcome, right? And what we're saying is we want each kiddo to be putting forth their best effort. That outcome might look very different from child to child, from class to class, for all different reasons. But that's what we want. We want our kiddos to do the best that they are personally capable of. And I would say with any difficult parenting moment, I find as a parent myself, where I get most stuck, where a lot of parents I work with get most stuck, is those moments where I have to slow down and ask myself what my own priority in this moment is. Is it to be right or is it to be effective? Because sometimes I'm right and they need to know that I'm right. It may not actually lead to them hearing me that I'm right. It may not be effective. If my goal is to be effective, if I actually want to move them in a particular direction, I might have to take a stance that feels uncomfortable, or I might have to move in a way that's more flexible than I'd like to be, because that's what's going to make movement happen. But if my goal is just to be right, then I can stay rigid in what's right. And so slowing down and checking in the moment about what's actually my goal is going to help me be more effective in that moment also.
Wow. Yeah, we have to sign up people for parenting classes from you, Erica. Definitely.
It's amazing that we don't have this in our curriculum, right? We
We
all
don't.
learn.
I would be very frank about it. Like me and my husband, we are a little late parents. Like we had our kids at the age of 35, and we literally that what to expect when you are expecting, and the first year, we were very, very intentional about it, and
Yeah,
that's what we needed
yeah,
as a parent. What we should be expecting. Of course, there is obviously changes, and you figure that out as you are, but I really wish that there was something, a guidebook for, especially when the kids are turning from, that 5, 7 to into the preteen age,
mhm.
what to expect from, and as a parent, how do you move, change your parenting style? Definitely. Um, I suppose one of the, let's turn our attention to, say, let's say if the child is, the parents realize that they are worried and they are concerned about a child for their mental health, and they are considering professional support. If they are 8, 9, it's a very hard time to look for mental health professional support. What is the best way to start that process? What does it look like?
So,
I'll jump in.
yeah,
Yeah.
jump in.
So I think start with a pediatrician is probably the first place. Every child has a pediatrician. It's just part of the way, at least in our Western culture, things work. And pediatricians are skilled at recognizing these milestones, recognizing the speed bumps along the way, and when to refer out. So always start with pediatricians. Certainly ask at school. Teachers know many kids over many years. We know our 2 or 3 or 4 kids. Teachers know tens and hundreds. They're going to know which kid is the outlier, which kid's having an unusual struggle, and they'll tell us. They'll typically tell us, right? So we want to use these resources, people who really know many kids, not just us with our one worry about our one kid, right? The next thing would be to potentially look at seeing a therapist, see a psychologist, somebody like in Erica's practice. I will say, usually a psychiatrist like me, I'm kind of the last stop as opposed to one of the first stops, because the biological psychiatry at this point, we want to do everything we can without addressing the biological side. Presumably these kids are well and they don't need to look at something like medication, a biological intervention. But this is the nature of collaboration amongst peers, is we're constantly co-treating because one treatment enables the other, right? And the idea always is, I certainly tell most of the families I work with, if they're going to be doing something with me, the day that we first start treatment is also the day we're planning the discontinuation. We're planning the start and we're looking at the end. That end may be flexible. I can't predict the future, but please understand, we're looking at getting your kid back onto their developmental trajectory. That is the goal. It's not treat this symptom. It's treat this symptom or this condition in the service of development. We want your kid to grow up all the way and make it to 24, 25 in the best version of themselves. Well, healthy, content, feeling successful, building integrity. And that includes everything we talked about: good relationships, a sense of competence in their work, whatever it is, ideally not abusing drugs too much or other substances like alcohol, responsible use of technology, because this is a challenge. So there's a lot of getting the kids back on that developmental trajectory. Erica, jump in.
Yeah, and that was beautifully put. Rely on your village, right? The village is larger than you think it is. And there is actually not judgment there. It is so common for kids to be receiving additional emotional support. The child study team, the guidance counselors in your schools, they are able to see your kid all day long, to Dr. Friedman's point, and they also have a comparison of, is this child appearing more moody than what is typical for this age across the hundreds of other children this age they see all day. So relying on the people who support you at school, relying on your pediatrician, and being an educated consumer is tricky in the mental health space. But if you're worried that your kiddo is anxious, it's okay to look for some information, and you want to know your source. And so it's helpful to talk to your pediatrician. Where do I look? Because there's a lot of misinformation out there. But if my kiddo's anxious, odds are the evidence is going to suggest start with CBT and add in medication if needed. But you want to learn about that. You're not expected to know that. If you're not in the field, how could you possibly know that there's different treatments for different types of difficulties? We have DBT and CBT and ERP, all the initials. Therapists love initials, right? But you want to try to read up, and you want to go to a source that feels reliable. And if you're unsure if it's reliable, ask your pediatrician, ask your school counselors, talk to people who you trust so that you feel like an educated consumer, and then listen to your children. The statistic I heard is that in the US, the average number of times an adult sees a therapist is once, because they continue to see them until they find the right fit. With kids, we just drop them off and assume they're going to see whoever we connect them with, and it may not be the right fit. So we also want to listen to our kiddos
Yeah.
and make sure therapy may not be negotiable, but who they see can be. We want them to feel like it feels like the right fit and they're getting the help that they need.
How do you actually, especially at that early age, there is a lot of stigma around therapy, right? Even for the children, there is. Um, how do we actually, figure, how do we speak to the child if we realize that they probably need to visit the therapist without them feeling like they have a problem?
I actually think the stigma is more from the adults and the parents than the kids. The kids are used to at school speech therapists, OTs, guidance counselors. They're coming in and out of the class. The kids are getting pulled out for one-to-one support. It's so normalized for them that I think this is actually a bigger fear for parents that they think their kids will feel than what actually happens. If you happen to have a kiddo who's sensitive to this, right, there are a lot of ways to manage. I think part of this is there's no shaming, right? That this is something that we see that they're struggling with. We want to get extra support. The way that you would approach them if they were struggling in math, you would never say, you're terrible at math, we're getting you a tutor, right? You would say, this year math has been really tough, and so we want to get you some extra support to help. This year, you've been seeming really sad, and I just want to make sure that we have some extra support while you're feeling sad. I also think part of it is finding the right fit. I've had clients call me Coach Erica, and their parents discuss, just like, in soccer, you have a coach who's helping you work on your dribbling, who's helping you work on your shooting. Coach Erica is here to help you learn how to manage when that anger gets really big and you're not sure what to do with it. That's great. That's what worked for that child. You can figure out what is already in your child's life that's a helpful comparison. So it's not, you're going to this person to fix this thing that's wrong with you. It's, hey, this has been hard this year, and not only are we going to help you, I need some help figuring out how to help you. So the other part of Dr. Erica's job is to help me figure out the most helpful way to help you, because I find I'm not helping you the right way. When I try to help, it's really frustrating for you because I'm not doing it right. And I want to talk to her about how I can approach you differently and be more supportive.
Absolutely. We are actually 2 minutes away, but I do want to quickly mention this topic. Social media screen at this age, what kind of effects it has, and how do you actually help them to be away from it without feeling like you are the social pariah and you are the meanest possible parent out there in the world?
I would say it's okay to be the meanest parent. I think if my kids don't at some point tell me that I'm the meanest parent, I'm probably not parenting enough, right? They're not supposed to like all the limits I put. It's their job to push against it, and it's my job to hold firm when it's about their health and safety. So part of this is embracing being a mean parent. That's okay. Our preteens, we have to be so careful with. The brain's reward centers are super sensitive to dopamine, to oxytocin, from social praise. They crave these comments, the likes, the thumbs up, the hearts. Their brains, the more of it they get, the more of it they want. It's almost like an addiction. We have to be so careful. They're in this phase where they're just starting identity formation. Social media, it's a testing ground for sure for self presentation, but when you're using it excessively, it can hinder your exploration. It can lead to low self concept, a lot of comparisons. The brain that's in charge of emotional processing is still years away from being mature. So we're handing our preteens this device that they can't actually biologically manage and can't emotionally reactive. So they're more reactive to social cues, both positive and negative. We know that overuse leads to increased rates of depression, anxiety, sleep problems, body image issues. Their social skills decline, knowing how to interact and face to face, reading facial cues. I don't speak this language fully because I'm too old, but my clients will tell me, oh my God, they sent a picture of their whole face instead of just their forehead. It is so much to navigate. It is too much for this age range to navigate. They cannot do it. The comparison that's curated online is so detrimental to them. It is really concerning. So what do the experts say? Delay introducing them to it.
So
It
I
is
have heard Wait Till 8th is the organization that's going to be actually at the Youth Mental Wellness Fair as well. And that's what Livingston parents are kind of trying to push for. So, yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Miller and Dr. Friedman. As we begin to wrap up, we are exactly at the hour. I want to highlight a few themes that came through so clearly tonight. So, the preteen years matter more than we obviously realize. I mean, the amount of development that Dr. Friedman explained. Early support is definitely important for prevention. Emotional safety and connection. I think those are powerful proactive factors. You also said that parents don't have to know everything, and we can be mean parents, but at the same time, we have to be curious and a lot more things. On behalf of Shiv's Third Eye, I really want to thank both of you, Dr. Friedman and Dr. Miller, for your insight, compassion, and clarity. And thank you so much to all the parents who actually chose to spend this 1 hour with us. This panel is part of the broader Youth Mental Wellness Fair that we have on 25th. If you do want to talk to Dr. Friedman and Dr. Miller, they are going to be at the fair. Please feel free to walk up to them and ask them any questions. If there are other questions, please put it out and we will try to answer those as well on the YouTube. And we will continue to we hope that you continue to join us for many next conversation as well next Wednesday about college bound kids, and for in-person fair. Most importantly, I think we do have to remember that we are all trying our best to be our kids' best parents they can get. And thank you so much and good night. I really appreciate your presence tonight.